When you look at these paintings, you might be as curious as I was. Why are their colors so rich and clean? How do these artists think about color? What's the secret behind it? In my own work, either I use too many colors and it ends up looking muddy, or it feels flat and dull. I've learned some important color theory that helped me make my paintings more vibrant and clean. In this video, I'm going to share what I've learned about color. I'll focus on solving two main problems. Where does rich color come from? And how can we add vibrant color? When I first started learning color, I either just copied from photos, or I added way too many random colors, or I was so worried about making the painting look messy that the colors ended up looking dull and lifeless. If you've had the same struggles, this video will help you. The color on this character's back is red, and the shape wrapping around it looks green, right? But if we actually sample both colors, we'll see that they're both red. The difference is just in how saturated they are. Handling color is really about managing the contrast between colors. That's why we need a way to describe color: hue, saturation, and value. In other words, it's about managing the relationship between these three. Hue. Here are two sets of color combinations. One set feels more harmonious, and the other has stronger contrast. Simply put, the closer two colors are on the color wheel, the more harmonious they'll look together. The farther apart they are, the stronger the contrast. Usually, the color that's farthest away is called the complementary color. But you'll notice that sometimes the farthest color doesn't actually create the strongest contrast. A complementary color isn't just one specific color. It generally refers to colors that fall within the 120 to 180 degree range on the color wheel. Tip: if your painting feels a bit dull, try adding stronger color contrast at the focal point. Saturation and value are pretty easy to understand. They refer to how intense or strong a color is and how light or dark it is. The tricky part is, a color's value changes depending on how the light hits it. We'll get highlights, midtones, and shadows. And as the value changes, the saturation changes too. In very dark or very bright areas, the true color doesn't really show. Let's take a look at this triangle color picker. The x-axis represents saturation. The y-axis represents value. So the most intense, pure color sits in the middle. When saturation is highest, value is around 50. If you make the value lighter or darker, the saturation drops. Hue itself has value. When we want to add more colors, simply changing the hue isn't enough. The value will be different. When we turn colors into black and white, we can see that hue itself has value. We want to change the hue, but keep the value the same. Green is a mid-value color, while blue is a low-value color. So when we shift the hue toward blue on the color wheel, we need to raise the value a bit. The value stays the same. It sounds a bit complicated, but there's actually a really simple method. Just use the RGB sliders. Select the color, switch to the RGB sliders, and slightly adjust the color bias. This lets you create rich color variations while keeping the value almost unchanged. A lot of people say that as long as the value is correct, you can add whatever colors you want. Let's give it a try. That's actually true. But sometimes the result doesn't look that clean. There's a really useful approach for this. Use darker hues in the shadow areas and lighter hues in the light areas. For example, we add cooler blues in the shadows and warmer oranges in the highlights. This makes the painting look cleaner and clearer. If you do the opposite, the colors can start to look muddy. And using cool, warm contrasts is the key to making colors look clean and rich. Let's break down cool, warm contrast in more detail. There are two main types of cool, warm contrast: hue contrast, saturation contrast. When blue and yellow are placed together, they have a clear, cool, warm contrast because they're complementary colors. When we arrange colors along the color wheel, we can see that cool and warm are also defined by contrast. Even though these two colors are both green, one feels warmer. Simply put, the farther apart the colors are on the wheel, the stronger the contrast, and vice versa. This is the principle behind complementary color combinations and analogous color combinations that we often see. When complementary colors have strong contrast, we can add some gray in between to create a smoother transition. For example, if the shadow color and the ground color have strong contrast, adding gray can help make it look more natural. There's also a more subtle way to create cool, warm contrast. The button and the strap on this character's neck look blue at first glance, but when we sample the color, we'll see that it's actually yellow. That cool, warm contrast comes from a change in saturation. When you gray out a warm color, it feels cooler. When you gray out a cool color, it actually feels a bit warmer. It's not just hue that affects color. Value plays a big role too. Let's look at paintings from before and after the Impressionist period. If we turn them into black and white, we can see that Impressionist paintings tend to have lower value contrast. You can think of value as the framework that holds the colors. More gray values in a painting make it possible to include a richer variety of colors. As we discussed earlier, the midtone has the highest saturation, while the others lose saturation because of the change in value. So when we paint, we can emphasize the saturation in the midtone to create stronger artistic impact. So how do we actually use all of this? Even though we've talked about many kinds of contrast, stronger contrast isn't always better. There's an important idea called color range. When we look at the works of master, we'll notice that their color range usually stays within 180 degrees on the color wheel. By limiting the color range, they can express the theme more clearly. And in nature, most landscapes also have a dominant color theme. This is a photo study, and I limited the color range. In the next painting, I used this photo as a reference for the mood, and I built a 3D model to help with the lighting and perspective. I'm working on a course about using 3D to assist 2D art. Feel free to check it out if you're interested. The issue with this one is that the shadow areas take up a large portion of the image, and the value contrast is strong, so there's less space to include rich colors. I'll keep sharing my art journey. Thanks for watching.